All right, welcome everybody inside another live edition of Deep Look. It is Tuesday, October 1st. I'm Charlie Eisenhood, joined by Ultiworld Senior Editor Keith Rayner, as we've now got our Nationals pools. Hopefully you were with us for our bonus show on Thursday, live Nationals pool draw. Lots of fun. Keith, we got a little time before Nationals, a chance to really soak in these pools, think about the matchups, get ready for the broadcasting schedule coming out very soon. It's an exciting time, October.
Yeah, we get to soak in our various basketball fandoms and baseball and football. I mean, it is a busy time in sports. Your teams are out here making trades. Your mayors are getting indicted. I mean, it's crazy time in New York too. So I mean, it's you got a little bit of everything in your life.
I'm not gonna lie, it is a little wild. We're gonna kick off today's show with the trivia question of the week. Let's get right to it.
Jumping right on this week's trivia question. We had maybe a little bit of history made at regionals weekend when AMP was knocked out by DC Rally, ended their 17-year qualification streak. So for this week's trivia question, I actually went back to look at the first year that AMP made nationals to start that streak back in 2006. Charlie, how many other teams in the mixed division from that nationals still exist to this day from that first 2006 season? I will, if you can name the teams, I'll be even more impressed. But how many teams do you think were at nationals in 2006 in the mixed division and still exist?
Still exist. So they don't have to be at nationals. They just have to exist.
Correct.
Okay.
They have to have qualified for nationals in 2006.
I'm going to give you some ideas of potential names that I think would be around. The quantity, I'll give a guess in a second, but some names that I think might have been existing in 2006. Number one, Slow, formerly Slow White. Number two,
that is correct.
Chad Larson Experience out of Iowa.
They're in there.
Yes. There's some other legacy programs. Like some of the more recent legacy programs like Mixtape and Dragon were not around back then. I mean, Dragon, I'm going to say Dragon, actually. They might have had a different name.
Not Dragon.
Okay. I was right. I'm going to guess a total of 10 teams.
Wow, 10. That is way too many. Way too many. It is
way too many.
2/3.
Wow.
Depending on one team.
That's
with
crazy.
An asterisk, which is CLX. CLX qualified for nationals in 2006, but did not decline to attend because they were going to go to WUC, which I guess conflicted in some way. I don't quite get it, but they didn't go to nationals because they were going to go to the World Club Championships. The other team, which TD just dropped in the chat, Mischief, who actually won nationals in 2006 in the mixed division.
Okay.
So 2, if you want to count Slow and Mischief, as the only teams to both qualify for nationals then and still exist besides AMP, and CLX, who declined to go to nationals. So I would have counted 2 or 3 as correct answers, which I think goes to show how impressive it is, not just to even qualify for nationals for 17 straight seasons, but to stay together, to keep your program together for that kind of duration, especially in the mixed division. Really challenging. So, props to Mix to AMP for riding it out in mixed.
That's wild. It's I can't believe I guessed 2 of the 3 teams. That's pretty cool. All right. Let's take a look at the brackets that would be projected by the Nationals pools if they go to seed. I want to start with this, and then we'll take a look at the pools as well. So maybe we should start with the pools if we can do that. I'd love to start with the mixed division pools. if we can begin with that, and then after that, we'll take a look at the projected bracket. Um, I'm doing this on the fly, so our producer is working hard in the background. Oh, okay. I am being told that we don't have the pools ready to go, so that's our bad. So, Keith, why don't we just chat about the pools themselves while we wait for that, and then mixed pools. Let's call them up. Um, we've got our
Give it to you.
various flavors of pool, Keith, in the mixed division.
Oh,
It's
yes,
awesome.
yes. You're a big fan of this.
So the mixed pools, Pool A, BFG, Red Flag Tower, and Lawless. Pool B is Disco Club, Hybrid Rally, and Moondog. Pool C is Dragon Thrust, Exist, Space Force, and Mixtape. And Pool D, the S Pool, Shame, Sprocket, Slow, and Shine. Obviously, we chatted about these pools last week with some time to kind of think about them, Keith. Uh, any further thoughts on these mixed pools?
Well, you got the West Coast pool in Pool A, BFG, Red Flag, Tower, and Lawless. I believe all of these teams played each other at PEC West. So there's definitely some background there, and then you got teams that are competing at the same regions. So that's the most familiar pool, I guess. Pool D is maybe the like kind of opposite side of the country with Sprocket and Slow, obviously very familiar with each other. I actually saw some complaints about the number of regional rematches, particularly in mixed. Do you feel like there's any merit to that? To this be so? Somebody said this is a clearly a failed format or something of that nature in our chat because it
Well,
put together so many regional teams, which to my understanding, could have happened in other formats. So I don't know.
yeah, and in fact, they very rarely attempted to block regional rematches in the previous seeding format. No, I don't think it's a problem, and here's why. The teams themselves have told USA Ultimate that they don't care. So that the rule last year was that you wouldn't have regional rematches unless there were at least 3 teams from a region attending nationals, in which case you could have up to 2 together in a pool. Um, so here's a look at the pools if you're joining us on YouTube. Uh, I really think it's fine. Uh, there's I can see. I guess my feeling is if teams are okay with it, then I'm okay with it. I like the drama of a regional rematch, and a lot of times teams often feel that they haven't really even played each other that much. It's not like the old days when you would have, let's say Sprocket and Slow would have played 5 or 6 times before nationals. Because of the new structure of TCT, it actually doesn't happen all that much. Sometimes teams don't even play until like regionals. Like they'll play 1 time the whole season. So I think it's okay. There's plenty of opportunities to get that regional diversity during the season. And when it comes down to nationals, it's time to just win, baby.
Yeah, we to me, we mostly need to be focused on the competitive equity and integrity of the tournament. And it's all cute and stuff to be like, oh, let's avoid regional rematches until it has a big swing on competitive equity. I don't know that it would have necessarily in this case in the mixed division, but let's say that you had 2 teams from the same region and one got pushed out of the pool and instead it pushed in a way better team or a way worse team, and suddenly you're disrupting the competitive equity of the actual pools. That to me seems foolish. You've had your chances to get out of region competition. You will get more at nationals unless you're really unlucky. And if you happen to play a bunch of teams from your region, so be it. You were at nationals. You got to watch lots of Great Ultimate and be a part of Great Ultimate. So I don't know. To me, not really the goal to go out there and get some extra chances to play against new friends. Like that's not what we're here to do. So
I'm fired up for Pool C. I'm fired up for Austin Disco Club versus Michigan Hybrid at the top of Pool B. A lot of good matchups here. A lot of potential paths to the bracket. Let's take a look at what the bracket would look like if everything went to seed. Now, I think it's safe to say that not everything will go to seed in the mixed division, but if it does, this is what we get. BFG would play the winner of Hybrid and Space Force. Shane would play the winner of Rally and Exist. Dragon would play the winner of Sprocket and Tower, and Disco Club would play the winner of Slow and Red Flag. Um, I think right off the top, I think you maybe circle that potential BFG hybrid rematch in a quarterfinal. And on the other side of the bracket, Disco Red Flag, if things go to seed, would be I think a very interesting game in quarters there. Some more competitive quarters than maybe we typically see.
The BFG is probably not excited to potentially see hybrid or disco club. I think maybe while we're looking at these brackets, we can think about the sort of inflection points, how they might change things. I'm sure BFG not really excited about their draw for quarters. No matter how you slice it, the teams that they're likely to see all look like very strong opponents, and so BFG, fortunately though, is very well tested. They're a team that has a lot of championship experience, have played against strong competition. I think they're well suited to face those kinds of challenges. But obviously, if you're them, you'd much rather get an easier draw than a tough one, I think.
I mean, it's not going to be a great path for BFG. As good as they've looked, I think they're still probably the favorites to win. But like you look at the potential path, right? They're probably going to get the loser of hybrid and disco club. Although who knows what's going to happen in Pool C, which would define that pre-quarter matchup that feeds into their quarter. So then they have to win that game, and then they'll probably see shame, the defending national champions. So look, winning a title is hard. You're going to have to play good teams, but I think ultimately, if I'm looking at this and I'm Dragon Thrust, I'm saying, wow, our path looks awesome. Like you dodge BFG and shame. You have the winner of Sprocket and Tower. Like that's not a daunting matchup, if I'm being honest. And then you get Disco or Red Flag. Like you're going to have to play somebody good at some point, but they get a pretty comfortable walk through that side compared to all of the firepower in the top half of the bracket. So, of course, who knows what will happen in these pools, but Dragon's got to be feeling pretty good about things.
Well, the trade off that I think you and I were discussing before we went on air was that trade off between having a tough pool and potentially a tough bracket path. In Dragon Thrust, yeah, they get the reward if they can survive what I think most people feel like is the toughest pool with Exist, Space Force, and Mixtape. So maybe it makes sense that if they can navigate that really difficult start to the tournament, they're going to be in a favorable position once they get into the bracket. I think that BFG may be on the other end of that. I've talked up Pool A. I think Pool A could be dangerous, but the champion of Pool A may not really get a great reward in that one slot. So this is our new format. The difference between 1, 2, 3, 4 is fairly minimal at this point in what you're going to get as a prize for your regular season success.
Who's your favorite coming into nationals?
Got to be BFG. I think they're the only team that's really checked all the boxes in most ways. There are marks against I think the other 4 tier 1 teams in my mind, which are the other top 4 seeds and hybrid. To me, those are the teams that I'm most attached to being a potential championship team. Those are my tier 1 kind of squads. And I think there's marks against Dragon, Shame, Disco Club, and Hybrid. And BFG's track record is pretty spotless through this season.
All right, let's move on to the men's division. We'll take a quick look at the pools, and we will run down these. So Machine, Sockeye, Pony, and RDU facing off in a very interesting Pool A. Dig, Ring, Goat, and Mallard in Pool B. Bravo, Rhino, Chain, and Furious in Pool C. Revolver, Truck, Double Wide, Shrimp in Pool D. I feel like, we've already discussed this a bit, but like, do we have potentially 3 semis teams in Pool C? I mean, I feel like we keep seeing this, right? Bravo, Rhino, and Chain all feel like credible semis teams to me. Not, there's not enough spots to go around. I really think like Chain is the 9th ranked team right now. 1 to 10 at least in the rankings. I feel like all of those teams could make semis. Maybe I don't include Sockeye in that conversation, but otherwise, I literally think they all could make semis.
I mean, I was high on Chain coming into the year. I do not think that the way that they've performed this season indicates at all that they should be considered as a semis contender, like a firm.
I hear you,
contender.
but
the possibility is very much
Ring.
there. but the fact, yeah, they beat Ring at regionals. I'm not saying they didn't. They also went 2-0 against Rhino, a team that's in their pool, so that's a good sign. Although who knows what you're going to make of any results from pro championships, where they also beat Dig. But they have a pretty mixed resume from the year. So I think that it is totally reasonable to project Chain to be really good at nationals, but I don't know that the evidence is there to support it aside from the gut feel, looking at the roster. And maybe that's what we're paid to do, is to do a deeper dive analysis and just look at the wins and losses. But uh, if you just skip past that part, I think you're leaving information on the table. They just haven't been that team to me this year. I do, however, agree with you that Pool C is the scariest pool because I believe a little bit in the ceiling of Chain, and I think Furious is the best 4 seed. So I mean, it's a scary pool. I'm not trying to take that away by any means. That's a really tough draw for all the teams in the pool.
Let's take a look at the bracket if things go to seed, and we will see what teams will be facing as they advance into that bracket. So Machine would play the winner of Ring and Chain. Maybe we'll get that rematch of the Southeast final. Revolver would be looking at the winner of Rhino and Goat. Bravo play the winner of Truck and Pony. And Dig would play the winner of Sockeye and Double Wide. What stands out to you, Keith?
Well, I think if we were going off the public, if the market, so to speak, we could just go ahead and flip the positions of Revolver and Truck and Pony and Sockeye and proceed as if those results stood. I think that's what the general public is going to favor Pony to finish second in Pool A and Truck to finish at the top of Pool D. So if you reimagine, particularly the Truck Revolver thing, I mean Revolver's really good, but I think a lot of people still have Truck as their favorite to win the national title this year. I think that's
Sure.
a pretty significant change to the shape of the bracket to put Truck in that Revolver slot. And then look at that path for Bravo. I mean, you're talking about the winner of Revolver Pony, and then
Oh, Revolver Sockeye
whoever
based
emerges from
on
the bottom of that. It's tough.
sorry, Keith. Revolver Sockeye would be that pre-quarter if Pony beats Sockeye and ends up in the other pre-quarter.
Oh, you're right. Revolver Sockeye. So Bravo facing a pretty strong opponent in quarters, and then semifinals. They're getting probably either Dig or Pony. Yikes,
Right.
that's not easy. Then obviously you're into the tough territory anyway. So uh, Bravo with a difficult looking path if you make some of those assumptions.
Yeah, I think, if you're Truck and Revolver, you really want to win your pool. I think you're going to get a much easier quarterfinal as a result. And obviously, not having to play pre-quarters is also a pretty big deal because I don't think, some of these teams are a little weaker. Like, I think Goat, if they get into pre-quarters, which I don't know that they're gonna. Like, I think Mallard could beat Goat. Um, that's going to be like a nice matchup for Rhino or whoever ends up there. But otherwise, none of these games are going to be easy. And I don't know that any path is super easy. It feels like a wide open year. I think
Yeah.
it's hard to even pick a favorite this season. I mean, Truck has been understandably the favorite, but it seems like, they didn't play as well as maybe we thought they would at Pro Champs. Yes, I know they were missing a lot of people. Still wasn't that great. Then the breeze kind of look bad in the wind. What is the wind conditions going to be like? I mean, I just do feel like there's a little bit more question marks about Truck than maybe we had at the beginning of the year. And I also think that Machine looks so strong as the the number one ranked team. But I don't think they're guaranteed to make it back to finals either.
Bravo's at the top of our power rankings right now. Charlie, you've come a long way from Truck's never going to get broken again to they're not even the favorite anymore.
I mean, I do think
Big
that
fall off when you take away 10
I
of their players and whatever.
well, obviously, I'm not really knocking them too much for not playing well at Pro Champs. I mean, I basically ignore the Pro Champs results pretty much completely. I just think that like the fact that they took largely that same team to UFA Championship weekend and like kind of didn't do very well is not a great look for them. But I do think if we're in still conditions and it's like track meaty, yeah, they're impossible. Their offense is going to be impossible to stop.
I probably don't have the capacity to bring back the Ulti World Betting League, but man, there's be some juicy places to put your chips. I mean, this is a wide open year in both of the divisions that we've discussed thus far. We'll see if the trend holds in the women's division, but man, you really could take a stand somewhere because I can see a lot of teams that I could talk myself into that I can envision making a run.
Okay, here's a question. If you're Truck, do you want to stay on this side of the bracket in order to avoid Machine until finals? Or is that just not on your mind at all? Because I think Machine
I
is
think it's
clearly the like most
probably
talented
not on your
team.
mind. I
Yeah,
think it's probably not on your mind necessarily. I mean, obviously, it is. If you think Machine is that good, and if by the time you get to semifinals, like I think you're just kind of like in we're gonna have to beat them at some point mode, right? So
sure.
it's fine for it to be semifinals. If I wouldn't want to be focused on that if I were Truck, especially not a
Gonna be
year
some
like this year.
incredible bracket games, and even pre-quarters looks on paper very tantalizing right now. Let's move on to the women's division. Take a look at the pools. You've got Fury, Flipside, Traffic, and Nemesis in Pool A. Scandal, Bent, Schwa, and Parcha in Pool B. Brute Squad, Molly Brown, Sixers, and Pop in Pool C. And Phoenix, Riot, Iris, and Grit in Pool D. Um, I think we've already kind of broken this down a lot. We have two just tremendous top of the pool matches in Brute and Molly, Fury and Flipside. Those games happening in rounds 3 and 4, or I guess I should say 4 and 3 respectively in on pool day on Thursday. And hey, I mean, pretty much everything at the top looks interesting. I heard some buzz that like Riot's feeling a little miffed at our assessment of their being the easiest pool 2 seed matchup and Phoenix having a cakewalk pool. Um, but you know what? I still think Phoenix has to feel really good about their opportunity to kind of cruise through Pool D.
Right, but I mean, if you are in Riot shoes, maybe they're celebrating instead of maybe writing down uh great draw or whatever they want to title themselves. Maybe it's
Because
just
you don't
much a
have Fury,
celebration
Scandal,
of
and
the
Brute.
fact that right, you don't have Fury, Scandal, and Brute in your way. You have a potential path to winning the pool. You don't have Molly Brown lurking around. You don't have Sixers or Traffic or Schwa. I think those are scarier 3 seeds. Uh, I think that they also have a great draw. So if you're a Riot, this is a fantastic position to be in.
Let's take a look at the bracket. And this was again if everything goes to seed. So Fury would play the winner of Bent and Sixers, a Northeast rematch. Phoenix would play the winner of Schwa and Molly Brown. Uh, can't forget about that matchup a couple of years ago in the bracket at Nationals. Brute would play the winner of Riot and Traffic, a Northwest rematch, and Scan will play the winner of Iris and Flipside. I do think that there's like a much better chance than in the other divisions of this basically playing out or very close to it with not a lot of upsets. It's just like more stratification in the women's division. I do think it's certainly likely that we see Fury, Scandal, Brute, and Phoenix in those bye spots. Although Brute losing to Molly Brown would not be a huge surprise. And of course, that would flip flop those two teams in this bracket.
We've certainly gotten comfortable over the years with following the preconceived notions coming into the women's division. I mean, it's been light on upsets relative to other divisions. And I think that makes it feel like this bracket is far more achievable with maybe a couple of flips, like you mentioned, Root Squad and Molly Brown, or maybe you talk yourself into flip side and Fury changing positions or something like that. There are a couple of places where maybe you're moving some teams around, but we have a sense that there's a true like title contender class, and then there's a strong challenger class, and then there's a group under that feels like there's a gap. So that lack of movement makes this bracket feel particularly reachable, I think, this year.
So when you project out to those quarters matchups, Keith, so Fury Bent, Phoenix Molly, Brute Riot, Scandal Flipside, Where's your biggest possibility of an upset, do you think?
How can you not say Phoenix Molly, right?
Does that
A
even count?
team with maybe not. I mean, the bona fides for Molly Brown are obviously well established, and I know it feels like we've been dumping on Phoenix. Uh, They are a strong team. They earn their 4 seed, but the fact of the matter is, they went to the US Open. They got run out on day 2. They have losses to Sixers and multiple losses to Scandal. I mean, their resume is just not as good as the top championship teams, the top 3 seeds. And then Molly Brown gets a kind of a bye in our minds into being a semifinals contender based on what we've seen from their individual players and from their program in recent years. So I don't think you really blame us for casting this light on it. I think Phoenix over Molly Brown, even with the extra game in play, is probably still feels like an upset. By
Yeah,
the way, keep
I
an eye on
think
that
so.
Schwab. Remember when Schwab said Molly Brown once before,
It did happen. It did happen.
Got some
Do you
history.
give Bent any chance against Fury?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think Bent's legit this year. But I think that they are inconsistent enough that they could they could have their hands full with Sixers, right? I think that's possible. But if they can get through, if I think that Ben has a legit chance to upset Scandal. I'm not saying it's a
Sure.
likely outcome, but I think it's possible. I think they could end up with a bye if everything plays their way. So I'm a believer that Ben is closer to being in that semis quality tier than to being, a pre-quarters out.
I'm going to be thinking a lot about the possibility of Flipside making semis this year. The upset potential is real. Flipside is good. Going to get some great matchups once again here in the women's division. I'm fascinated to see it play out. Those top of the pool games going to matter a lot for how things kind of end up looking in the bracket. So, going to be some top billing on
We
pool play Thursday.
we also have some spicy regional matchups across every division that we looked at. I mean, here obviously you got Bent Sixers and Riot Traffic. I still have no idea how to slice the 3 Northwest teams in the women's division. I don't know who I favor in heads up matchup or in a triangle of matchups. In the men's division, we had Ring Chain if everything went to seed in pre quarters. Obviously, a lot of history there for that matchup. In the mixed division, I think we had a Northeast rematch too for Slow and Sprocket. So there are definitely some real potential regional rematches that could play out. And who knows what'll happen. I think the mixed division is the most volatile. I think we've established that reputation over the years. So I don't know how that bracket's going to shake out, but I fully expect us to get at least 1, 2, 3 big regional rematches in pre-quarters and quarters that could be really dramatic and firework filled.
All right. Well, that's a look at our projected brackets. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking EUCF results. The European season has come to a close. We're going to talk about who took it down. We'll be right back.
Now has sublimated 5-panel hat. You can get the hat and their famous reversible free with the purchase of one of their 3-piece team bundles, starting at just $85. Get all the details at breakmark.com.
Welcome back to Deep Look. We are rocking and rolling. EUCF happened this past weekend over in Europe. And Keith, we've got our champions. Congratulations to starting in the women's division. Brute takes it down 13-10 over Moon Cup. In the mixed division, Deep Space takes it down 15-14 over Tiefsee Tauscher. And in the open division, Mooncatchers over Clapham 15-10. So, Keith, a lot of the teams we expected to be vying for the title did so, but definitely some surprises along the way.
There certainly were. I mean, you look at the women's division, top seed Yaka. I'm looking at the bracket. I'm Control F. Where'd they go? I can't find them. Where they totally disappeared in that one. Clapham opens the tournament with the getting upset very early on by Quixotes. That was a warning sign for Clapham and Mooncatchers though kind of rolling through the tournament on that one, and then you get the best final in the mixed division. So plenty to chew on from a pretty exciting weekend out of the UCF.
Yeah, I mean, just to stay on that Mooncatchers Clapham game for a second. I mean, this game was basically over right away. Uh, Mooncatchers goes up 3-0. Clapham finally ekes out a hold. Then they give up another pair of breaks. It's 6-1. And then a break for half for Mooncatchers. It's 8-2. So it was curtains at that point. Clapham kind of got a couple breaks back to make it respectable, but they were never in it. As we take a look at our top 8 teams, Shock ends up finishing in third. They get the bronze. Lafot's on fourth, Gentle fifth, Chevron Action Flash, Wall City, and Hrut. So, Keith, you're all in for Wall City, but didn't quite come through for you.
It's actually worse than that. I was all in for Bad Skid, who failed
Oh,
to
that's
failed to
right.
even
That's
make the
right.
bracket.
That's
We
right.
both we both were in. We both were in for one team, one like kind of off the cuff team, and both failed to live up to our expectations. So my bad. I guess it was me who was on the Bad Skid, but Shock delivering. You got to you were close with Wall City, but uh Clapham barely gets by Lafota in the semifinals. I mean, there were all the warning signs that this was Mooncatcher's tournament. They were dominant.
I mean, they're the best team in Europe, and they might be the best team in Europe for like 5 years. I mean, I take a look at this this Belgian Open side, and with Mooncatchers a part of that conversation as the top club, and I see what could be a dominant run in our future. Obviously, they had the big disappointment as the Belgian national team losing that game at Worlds, but I'm really excited to see what they do in WUCC in, was it 2 years, right? So 2026, as well as again as Belgian Open in 2028. I think that they have a legitimate chance to be a really dangerous team. If they can keep their team together, they can keep the personalities working together. You're going to have to watch out for that, or some splintering of the program. But obviously, on top of the world right now, getting that win over Clapham.
Well, plus they had some really strong pickups, which by no means am I saying that those pickups define their team. They've obviously backed up that Belgian Ultimate is strong in the open competition right now. But getting to pick up Arvidas and Paul Arders certainly helps strengthen your team. I do think we're probably going to have to start. People are going to have to talk about Matthew Mueller. He's been putting up buckets this year
Yep.
for Belgian Ultimate, so keep an eye on that name. I know we've all come to know Dan Desmarais, but and even to some degree, I think people have got to know Bontemps and the Yonkers, but watch out for Mueller. He's good. He's real good.
Yeah, they look fantastic this weekend. So let's take a look at the final standings in the mixed side of things. And of course, Deep Space getting another win, 15-14 final. They had to get through some tough games. I mean, they beat Reading 13-12 in quarters. Fairly close against Eskidistas as well in the semis. So, maybe as expected, a very close battle on the mixed side. And there's your top 8: Deep Space, Deep Sea Toucher, Tartu Turbulence, Eskidistas, Mosquitoes, Reading, Savage, and Disconnection.
Yeah, let me remind you that this is where you fell on your face. I believe you picked Lemmings. Nowhere to be found to make it. I got all 4 semifinals right, but you got the champion right with Deep Space. Yeah, great final though, right? This one was nip and tuck. I mean, I think there was maybe 1 2-point lead in the entire final early in the second half. But otherwise, this was a back and forth game, not a lot of breaks. A few more in the second half when it got down to it, but this was a pretty dramatic final that's probably worth a good rewatch.
I was super dramatic. I mean, it was break to win.
Yeah,
Chiefs Toucher got the early first half break to take the break and a half into the second half, and then a break to tie it up at 10-10 for deep space, and then they break to win. And I think that's where, having done it before, having been in these pressure spots, those kinds of being experienced in those moments can make the difference. So pretty sweet finish for them, and nice to go back to back. Let's take a look
shout
at
out
the women's side.
shout out Dennis Holzer with the 7 assists in the final in the loss for TFC Toucher. So that's a big number to stack up in the final.
It sure is. Um, Daniel Wilson leading the way for deep space with 5 goals and an assist. On the women's side, Krut gets it done. And like a lot of teams looked like they could be in the conversation about the teams we discussed, right? Jinx Midnight, Krut, Moon Cup, and all three of those teams did well. Those are your top 3 teams. Jinx Midnight finishing with the bronze. It was 15-14 in semis with Moon Cup and Jinx. So Jinx just missing out on a spot in the final. Krut gets the job done. And I mean, of those teams, I don't. Who do we pick, Keith? Remind me.
Uh, you picked Yaka to win with Jinx, Root, and Shout in the other semis,
Disastrous
and
pick.
I picked Jinx to win with Root, Yaka, and Shout in semis. So we have the
And I
same
think
4
that goes to show
semifinalists. I
you.
had Jinx to win. You had Yaka.
Yeah, I mean, Yaka not even anywhere to be found in the top 8. I think it goes to show you though that Roots, like, while I think many expected them to do well, I do not think they were the favorite. So a really nice performance from them. BFD Shout finishes in 4th, East Block 5th, Iseni, Fabulous, and Troubles closing out your top 8.
I mean, Root was stacked. I mean, obviously the names you know from their mixed competition with Flor Kalertz and Lola Dam, but they add Sarah Eklund and Flora Hay. I mean, they have Aurora Leshnik as well. Like they had Sid Raider, I don't know, Ann Menard. Like they were stacked. We probably should have seen this coming.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Laura Hay played great this week. This was another game that was over right out of the gate. It was 6-1. And so Groot just rolling off 4 straight breaks. And that was basically it. Again, Moon Cup got a couple back, but it was just too late. Offense too good for Groot. And they take down the women's division.
And they dominated throughout the weekend. I mean, they didn't have a close game. This was their closest game, and 10-13, I think, maybe misrepresents how close it was. But all their other games, nobody scored double digits. They crushed.
It's as Robbie's pointing out in the chat, Fruits split into women's and open because they were dominating so much in mix that it wasn't that compelling. And then what do? They go out and they win in the women's division. Obviously, they were not just the split Fruit team from before. They added some very important players. But Clartz was their best player and is clearly one of the best players in Europe. Will be in the conversation for player of the year, and deserves it. Deserves the hype. So we'll get to see many of the big stars from Europe over in the U.S. for Club Nationals in just a couple of weeks. So I'm looking forward to that. But any final thoughts on the European season, Keith?
Imagine a world. This is hypothetical. This is not even specifically European. Imagine you couldn't form an open or women's division team until after you dominated mixed. Like you have to like be so successful at mixed. If that were the rule, that was the only way you could form uh, groups for open and women. What ultimate world would we be living in then? Who knows?
It would certainly be a different one than we're living in now. All right. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. Before we go, we have our mailbag question of the week. Keith, what do we have?
Well, we were so intrigued by EUCF. We talked about the draw format and how club nationals in the US basically stole that from what was happening in the EUCF. What if we stole some other things from European club? What if USAU was run using the European club format? This question came out a little while back, I think from Ravi, asking about what if we use their qualification process here in the US, which is a blend of assigning bids during the regular season at specific events to championship winners. Those are their wild cards, and then using the rankings, pure rankings, to decide the rest of the way. No win and ins, no games to go, just straight up rankings after the season concludes to dole out all of their bids. Uh, how would that impact the U.S.? Would it be better? Would it give? I know we've all been searching for how do we give the regular season meaning. Would this do it? What do you think, Charlie?
Well, yes, it would give it a ton of meaning because in Europe they're directly qualifying teams out of the regular season. There is no postseason before the actual championship tournament. So, the wild card thing would work similarly to how it would work in the US, which is that the best teams that win these events are already going to qualify based on their ranking or are already going to qualify at regionals because they're in the case of the United States, because they're the best teams. So that's like it's kind of like it's a nice bonus. It's nice to know that you're in. It lets you focus on other things potentially. If you're like, hey, we already locked up a spot. Now we can focus on developing our depth for a couple of tournaments, and we'll like eat it in the rankings a little bit, and we don't care. You have a little bit more flexibility in that way. Obviously, the biggest change would be that it would put so much weight on Elite Select and SFI, and there's no room to go out there and tune up in time for regionals. Like, it would change teams' approach to everything, right? They would start their seasons earlier. They would play more tournaments in June, because once you got to qualifying games, you couldn't afford to have a bad tournament if you weren't an elite team. So
Well, I mean,
I think it would make for obviously a more meaningful regular season, but it would also change the complexion of how we kind of think about Ultimate in the US, which is that when we start the postseason, everyone has an opportunity to become the national champion.
so I have a couple of thoughts here, and some. So Joe's kind of talking about it in chat. I think that anytime that you're giving out bids in the regular season, you risk you risk hurting the strength of the regular season, because you're basically going to take the best teams and then remove them from the rest of the year until nationals. Uh, does that make the regular season more compelling? Like if let's say who won the U.S. Open this year? Truck Stop and uh what
I
not
think
Shame.
Fury
Who won
won.
Fury, Truck Stop, and I don't even
I don't
remember. That's
remember.
why this is a problem. But if let's say those teams made it, let's say it was Truck Stop, Fury, and Dragon or whatever, they just made it. I think it was BFG who won it mixed.
They played
Let's say
hybrid in
those
the
three
final.
teams.
No, hybrid won. Hybrid
Hybrid
won.
won. Okay. So
Yeah,
let's say
because
let's say let's
remember
say
they
those
they
teams
beat
just are out.
BFG
Like,
after.
does that make the regular season better to have those teams no longer count? If they do count, let's say they go to other tournaments that they already had scheduled, does it count to play against them the same way in the rankings? What if they're trying? What if they're just running through sets because they're like, I think you have to then remove those teams from the rankings as far as like games against them no longer should count because
I
we don't
mean,
know what's going on with those teams. I don't know. I think it's a little weird. It's a little wonky. I'm not saying it's has no merit, but I think it does have downsides that we need to be aware of. I also don't think you're necessarily giving out bids at Elite Select and Select Flight Invite if that's where you're kind of like getting at.
no,
I don't think you necessarily should be giving out bids to nationals in
maybe
those
elite
tournaments.
select, maybe elite
Maybe,
select
maybe,
winner.
but I don't know
That's
about
it.
that. I think Ravi says that you should just give it out at regionals and the US Open. You win US Open, you win regionals, you win pro champs, maybe. I don't know. You get a bid, and the rest is decided by the rankings. But we all know what happens when you decide by the rankings, which is invariably, eventually, someone feels totally boned, right? Somebody is sitting there and it's like, oh, it was windy and we beat some sectional level team 9-6 when our four of our star players left because they had to go to a wedding. And now we don't get to go to nationals because of it. Like that's what's gonna happen, and someone's gonna be pissed off about it. Uh,
Well, I just think
anytime you take it off the field like that, it's you're inviting potential problems.
that the problem is more the moral hazard that exists, similar to what happened in yesterday's Braves and Mets doubleheader. For those that don't follow baseball in the United States, the Braves and the Mets had to reschedule some games due to rain out last week. And it turned out that both teams needed to win a game to get into the playoffs. They were playing a doubleheader. So when the team won the first game, whoever it was, they no longer cared about the result of the second game. The result of the second game did not matter whatsoever to them because they were already in, and there was nothing they could do to really change their results. Now, there's like a little bit of seeding stuff that could happen, but you've just qualified for the postseason after you win. How do you think your motivation is going to be for the second game? Come on. And what do you know? The Mets and Braves played an amazing game one. It was back and forth, crazy swings, lead changes multiple times in the late innings. 2-run shot from Lindor to send the Mets through over the Braves. And then the Mets proceeded to score 0 runs to only get 3 hits in the next game as the Braves comfortably won 3-0. And they punched a ticket. And Arizona, who was waiting to see if one of the teams won both games, gets left out in the cold. The problem, of course, is that Arizona fans are probably going to feel frustrated by the fact that there was this second game where one of the teams had no incentive to win. And that's what would happen in this system. If you had a top ranked team going into regionals, right? Let's say they're third in the rankings and they're playing the 15th ranked team or something. They don't have an incentive to win the game. They're going to get into nationals whether they win or lose. But the team that's ranked 15th has a massive incentive to win the game. And you don't want to have those kinds of moral hazards that exist in competitive sports. So that's a big problem. I don't know what you do about it. I think that's an even bigger problem than what you're describing with teams potentially, sitting starters or whatever because they've already clinched a spot during the regular season, which I think is kind of unlikely. But no matter what you do, it creates a problem there.
Oh, weird. It turns out there's no perfect system with no flaws, including the one we're
Robbie says,
using.
yeah, because
Clearly has flaws.
no one ever feels boned by teams stealing bids at regionals. Well, we have a fix, okay? We have some fixes for 2025. These are Deep Look approved. Number 1, Canadian teams have to play 10 regular season games in order to be qualified for the USAU postseason. Not that tough. Not that big of a change. It prevents a lot of this bid stealing nonsense. Number 2, there should be we change to a pool drafting system to give a benefit to teams that win big tournaments or are high in the rankings, which, by the way, will be the subject. We're going to do mock drafts. If this was the system, we're going to do a mock draft of this year's Nationals field with me and Keith being joined by some special guests in order to pick said pools and represent each team. And so then you do that, and you also switch to probabilistic bids at the margin, and you stop having a bright line cutoff, and you solve a lot of the problems of the margin at the algorithm. You do those 3 things, I think you have a much better system right away. European system wouldn't work here.
Fix idea. Quick fix idea. If you just literally gave points in the algorithm for winning Pro Champs and US Open or potentially regionals, I guess you could do it at regionals too. Would that help? Like, if basically like winning Pro Champs was worth 100 algorithmic points or whatnot, in some ways that operates in the same way, right? It's less extreme than just handing out a bid, but it does confer a nice advantage that will help you when it comes time for seeding for the rest of the season. When it comes time to national seeding, it's
like
not a brick wall that like locks you in, but it does give you a nice benefit to winning those tournaments. Would teams actually think about it when they're it would or just would it be like, oh, that's cherry on top, you know?
Yeah, no, I like it. I think anything to create more incentives to want to win these tournaments and have like narrative structure besides nationals would be beneficial for the club season. So,
And I don't.
thank you,
I think
everybody.
that there. you can't really you can't do it for like all finals. You can't really do it for all tournaments. One, we don't really have the mechanism to do that. Like we don't have the actual technical ability because score report is such a mess and formats are so varied from tournament to tournament. Like how do you even label a game as the final or a semifinal? Not even all tournaments even have semifinals. Like we can't do it that way. But if you just do these specific tournaments that essentially have the same format almost every year and are run in a very high profile manner, I think that's probably manageable.
Totally. I mean, it's worth noting that the teams that win these tournaments are already getting a lot of benefit from the algorithm because they're beating a lot of good teams to do it.
Mhm.
But I have no problem with a bonus, right? Or even locking in a pool 1 seed if the teams qualify for nationals. Like, that's kind of the basis of one of the ideas for a pool drafting system. So, if you're interested in what a pool draft would look like, join us live in the UltiWorld Discord immediately following this program to hear us do mock drafts for pools. It's going to be a lot of fun. So you can sign up for a subscription at ultiworld.com/subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you in the Discord for mock drafts right after this.